All right, good to go.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is my website. So I'll be accessible on shoulderspecialist.in as well as I'm there on Google. So if anyone needs to call me or be in touch with me, I'll share my number so that anyone can feel free to ask me any question they have. So this is a special thanks to Project Ask Physios and Mr. Prerak Arya, due to which everything is possible. So big thanks and great initiative. So let's start about frozen shoulder. So frozen shoulder, I would define it as a stiff shoulder. So stiff shoulder is basically restriction in movements, both active and passive. So, best known to physiotherapists. So whenever patient comes to you with loss of shoulder movement, we define it as a frozen shoulder. But there is more to it. So when we look at the pathology, where you can start actually by saying the patient has a stiff shoulder. So there are four types of differential diagnosis. So first, always check the neck, because whenever a patient comes to you, he may already be suffering from some kind of a cervical spondylosis, where the problem may be arising from the neck, but it may be felt along the shoulder. So the classical, the kind of picture which I always explain is we have to first differentiate between a shoulder pathology and a cervical pathology. The most important thing is where is the origin of pain. A patient with painful neck will always say that the pain is originating from the neck and not from the shoulder. The cervical pain always goes up to the fingers, so there's numbness and tingling in the fingers. Cervical patients usually present with picture like this, where they try to raise their arm and keep it behind the neck, and this relieves the pain or relieves the impingement on the nerve. So, whenever the patient is able to raise his arm and keep it behind his head, usually is not a shoulder pathology. Points out more towards a cervical pathology. So the simple way of asking a patient is where does the pain start, where does it go to, and what are the sensations associated with that sort of pain. So shoulder pathology typically presents with painful range of movement, pain along from the from the shoulder joint up to the arm, and any sort of lifting movement at the shoulder joint aggravates the pain. So that is how you differentiate between a shoulder and a cervical pathology. Next is we define as near normal movements. Now, what is near normal movements? I classically talk about near normal movements in a patient who comes to your OPD or comes to your clinic, and basically the patient was all right till yesterday or day before and suddenly has a very severe painful shoulder, really not able to lift his arm, and if you try and do it yourself, the patient is able to lift it, but on their own it feels like a massive rotator cuff tear or like a big event has happened to the shoulder, but patient has no particular history of the same. So that is what we call as near normal movements, and it's very classically seen in something called as calcific tendonitis. So whenever a patient has an acute episode of calcium dispersion in the subacromial space, it leads to a very inflamed shoulder. And inflamed shoulder is basically a very painful shoulder, but not really stiff. So calcific tendonitis, before getting actually stiff, has a false impression of a stiff shoulder. So in such patients, it is always better to give them a dose of Kinacort, advise them some physiotherapy, and suddenly there is no stiff shoulder. The patient is back to full movements. So that is what we define normal movements in the shoulder. Third type shoulder or a differential diagnosis is a patient with having a nasty shoulder. What do I call nasty? Nasty is basically anyone who has some sort of infection or malignancy. It's not a common picture, very rarely seen in clinical practice, but definitely not worth missing and something which we should take very seriously. So any patient who has a swelling, past history of weight loss, or any past history of malignancy, primary elsewhere, we should always remember that this is one of the differential diagnoses for a painful shoulder. The last is the true stiffness. What is a true stiffness? The true stiffness is basically when the shoulder is absolutely not moving. The shoulder becoming absolutely stiff is called as true stiffness. And that is what here we are to discuss about. So once we have ruled out every other probability of having a bad shoulder, then we come down to something called as a true stiffness. So how do I define a true stiffness? A true stiffness can originate in the shoulder because of two major events. One is a traumatic reason and one is an atraumatic reason. So a traumatic reason leading to a frozen shoulder. Let's talk about a traumatic event leading to a frozen shoulder. It may be either because of a persistent dislocation. It may be because of some fracture in the shoulder. It may be because of some bursitis or partial tear of the rotator cuff. So that is how a traumatic frozen shoulder presents. An atraumatic frozen shoulder. This is the most common type of frozen shoulder which we encounter. So in the atraumatic frozen shoulder, there are basically two types. One is because of some pathology inside the shoulder, or what we primarily call as a diabetic frozen shoulder. So both of these present as atraumatic frozen shoulder, where the patient does not have any particular history of injury, but there is still stiffness which has set in. So that is how we define as atraumatic. So now let us start with three things. One is history, one is examination, and one is investigation. History is the most important thing when you look at a patient with a frozen shoulder. So what do you ask a patient when they come to you with a frozen shoulder? First, you ask them the basic question: do they have any history of trauma or injury? So that helps you rule out if there is any rotator cuff tear, if there is any fracture, if there is any past history of dislocation. So that is what is ruled out in the trauma. Second is speed of onset. As I said before, that calcific tendonitis sometimes has an immediate onset. So patient was all right 2 days ago. Suddenly the shoulder is very painful. He's absolutely not able to do. So that's a very rapid speed of onset for a frozen shoulder. As against when you consider a patient with a diabetic frozen shoulder. So what happens is, in a diabetic frozen shoulder, the patient typically gives a history of 2, 3, 4 months, gradually progressing, night pain. So it's not a very rapid onset, but it is something which the patient is seeing day on day. Third is the timing of pain. Frozen shoulder usually causes a lot of night pain. So patients usually have a decent range of movements in the day, but in the night they have a lot of night pain, and that wakes them up from sleep. Fourth is the progression of pain. Frozen shoulder, as everyone knows, has 3 stages. It tends to get worse, it stays stable, and then it tries to improve. So in the progression of pain, we can always ask the patient, is the pain progressing? Are they having more and more pain? Or is it stable now, or is it getting actually better? So progression of pain is one of the important points in the history. Next is diabetes mellitus. So any patient with uncontrolled or controlled, I'll always stress on the point that diabetes does not need to be uncontrolled to have a stiff shoulder. Patients with normal sugar can always develop a stiff shoulder. So even a known case of diabetes mellitus has a high propensity of developing a stiff shoulder. Next is recurrence. Recurrence is because a patient with a diabetic shoulder or a calcific tendonitis may have problem on the left side and then has started developing problem on the right side, or may have had a problem on the left side 6 months ago, 6 years ago, and again the same problem has been recurring for them. So that is how we define recurrence. Next, neural symptoms. And as I said earlier, we have to always rule out any sort of pathology originating from the neck. So any neural symptoms, we have to first rule them out. And the most important point of history is treatment, because this will give you an idea of how to progress with the further treatment for the patient. So when the patient has come to you with a past history of taking physiotherapy, some analgesic, some ultrasound, then you know that something has been tried before. Maybe it was done right, maybe it wasn't done right, but then you can always frame your treatment for the patient after that. So knowing what the treatment has been received is very important for you to frame the treatment after that. So next we move on to the examination part of it. In examination, always we first start with an inspection. So I'm not taking like a lecture here, so I'll just try and look at from the clinical perspective. So whenever you look at the patient, you always inspect if there is any muscle atrophy, if there is any scar will tell you if there is any surgery happened on the shoulder, any sort of interventional procedure. Next, swelling. As I said, some sort of infections or malignancies do present with a swollen shoulder. So any swelling should not be ignored, always investigate it for. Next, scapular dyskinesias. Any sort of painful shoulder will lead to abnormal scapular movements, ultimately causing dyskinesia. Next, we always examine the patient for range of movements. So for me, the most important thing is ask the patient to elevate their arm. So for me, this is 180 degrees. I mean, for everyone. So this is 180 degrees. This is 90 degrees. So I always calculate the range of movement at the point of presentation. I always jot it down on the paper and I always keep it in the record, so that next time the patient presents to you, you can always compare it with the range of movement which was there earlier. So range of movement is forward flexion, one is external rotation, and one is internal rotation. So three movements are very important. Overall abduction is not very important for documenting, but they give you a good picture. Third, palpation. Why is palpation important? If you routinely see patients of stiff shoulder in the OPD, you will see two commonly presenting patients. One is the one with a previous history of diabetes mellitus, so I call them as a primary frozen shoulder, or the ones who have a secondary pathology in the shoulder and have a stiff shoulder as the end result of it. So whenever the patient has any pathology inside the shoulder, they either have a painful AC joint, they have a tender long head of biceps, or the rotator cuff insertion site is painful. So in such situations, there is a pathology which is causing the frozen shoulder. So in those patients, frozen shoulder is a symptom. It's not the cause of their problem. So it is the manifestation of the problem which is actually happening inside. So there you go and treat the pathology. So that's why the palpation is important. So whenever you palpate the AC joint, you palpate the long head of biceps, you palpate the supraspinatus, any of them is painful, you know the cause of the pain is not just stiff shoulder, it is something which is inside the shoulder. When a diabetic frozen shoulder is examined, the patient has absolutely painless palpation. So whenever you palpate the shoulder at the anterior aspect, at the posterior aspect, there is no pain felt. And that tells you that the patient has a pure diabetic frozen shoulder, no pathology inside. Next, we always start with radiology. So radiology, X-ray. Why is X-ray very important? A lot of people, ask me that, there's nothing in an X-ray. Agreed. Something is never seen in X-ray 99% of the time, but that 1% is very important. And that 1% can never be missed, because that 1% defines your treatment. So what you always look for in an X-ray, the abnormal things which you see are any sort of fracture or dislocation. The patient may have had some sort of surgery done, and that may have led to some changes in the X-ray. That is something you look for. Calcific tendonitis. Calcific tendonitis usually happens in ladies who are somewhere around 30 to 50 age group. You always see some small speck of calcium, which is always better seen in an X-ray as compared to an MRI. So if you ask me, X-ray is the investigation of choice for a patient with calcific tendonitis, and you always go looking for it. So that is one of the things you should rule out whenever a middle-aged lady presents to you. Third, as I said, X-ray will always point out any infection or malignancy. You can easily diagnose it, or you can at least catch it, send the patient for a biopsy, MRI, and come to a final conclusion. Now, the problem begins when the patient has a normal X-ray. Normal X-ray will always lead to the confusion that where is the problem. So the problem may be just a primary adhesive capsulitis, or it may be post-rotator cuff injury, or the patient may have had some sort of a support given, a sling given, and the patient hasn't done the physiotherapy in the correct way and ended up with a stiff shoulder. So similar patient will present with a normal X-ray, but still having a stiff shoulder. Next, we look at the MRI. So whenever the patient has a normal X-ray but still has a stiff shoulder, we sometimes refer the patient for an MRI. Why do we refer for an MRI? Because we want to check the following things. Most importantly, in MRI, every frozen shoulder will present with the following symptoms. One is thickening of the rotator cuff interval. Now, what is the rotator cuff interval? So if you see the shoulder, I'll just show it to you here. So here, this is the shoulder joint. So now in this shoulder, if you see, this is the subscapularis, this is the long head of biceps, and this is the supraspinatus. So the area between the supraspinatus and the subscapularis is called as the rotator interval. So this interval is where the long head of biceps passes from, and this interval tends to be mobile otherwise. So if this interval tends to get thick, it is called as a thickening, or thickening on an MRI. So it is typically seen in a adhesive capsulitis. Second, inferior capsular recess. The obliteration of an inferior capsular recess is basically this pouch. So here you can see there is a bulging pouch. This is the capsule and this is the bulging pouch. So if there is no space in the inferior capsular recess, it is typically a obliteration. Now this is what is primarily seen in every frozen shoulder. Then in a secondary frozen shoulder, you see additional symptoms. You see additional images of subacromial bursitis, some sort of rotator cuff pathology, some partial tear, some full tear, some tendonitis, then some calcification is present, and then some rarely malignancy or infections. So this is what you hunt for in an MRI. So this is what an inferior recess obliteration looks like. So here, if you see on the left hand side, there's a pouch. So this is the normal synovial fluid which is present